As for the new topic, as we go on to the adolescence period, this is now entitled Rites of Passage, the Physical and Cognitive Development in Adolescence. Pubertal changes. Okay, puberty is a collection of physical changes that marks the onset of adolescence, including a growth spurt and the growth of breast and or testes. So in 1904, Stanley Hall proposed the storm and stress view that adolescence is a turbulent time charged with conflict and mood swings. Today's adolescents are exposed to a complex menu of lifestyle options through the media, and many face the temptations of drug use and sexual activity at increasingly young ages. So, sinasabi dito na ang puberty, ito yung physical changes o mga pagbabagong physical sa katawan ng isang adolescent. Okay, so hindi lang ito limited no, sa paglaki ng or sa paggrow ng breast or testes. Ayan, meron din tayong tinatawag na primary and secondary sexual characteristics. So that consists of puberty. So yung puberty, ito yung time na kung saan ay natapos na yung middle childhood or yung childhood per se. Yan. And then we are now going to the adolescence period. Okay? So the adolescence period is also the transition period from going to childhood to adulthood. Yan. So sabi din ng mga researches, um, magbe-benefit daw ang mga kabataan if they have caring adults in their lives in addition to parents or guardians. Yan. So, yung relationship daw natin sa mga caring adults na ito, mapamagulang man yan o mapaibang tao, ay makakatulong sa ating development as an adolescent. Ayan. So, ano nga ba yung mga physical changes na nangyayari sa isang adolescent that mark the transition to a mature young adult? Okay, so for pubertal changes, puberty includes bodily changes, hindi lang sa height and weight, as well as sa sexual maturation for both boys and girls. Girls typically begin their growth spurt earlier than boys, who acquire more muscles naman and less fat and greater heart and lung capacity. The mean age o yung average age na nag-uumpisa yung growth spurt sa mga girls ay 9. And then for boys, 11. So the peak rate of pubertal change occurs at 11.5 para sa mga babae and 13.5 naman sa mga lalaki. So during the growth spurt, girls increase in height about 3.5 inches per year, and for boys, about 4 inches. So there is one study that found for girls, earlier onset daw ng menarche o yung first menstruation, breast development, and growth spurt ay linked sa shorter height at 18 years of age. However, for boys, earlier age of growth spurt and slower progression, no, yung bumabagal siya hanggang sa puberty, were associated naman sa pagiging taller naman at age 18 years of age. So the brain communicates more effectively and the frontal cortex continues to mature. Kasi nga sinasabi natin na yung frontal cortex, ito yung parang last na nagde-develop sa adulthood na, no? So, kasi nga papunta na siya sa adulthood, so unti-unti nag-start na mag-mature yung frontal cortex. Sexual maturation, which includes primary and secondary sex characteristics, occurs predictable sequences for boys and girls. Okay, so ito yung sinasabi natin na primary and secondary sex characteristics na nangyayari during puberty. So pag sinabing primary, ito yung may kinalaman, no, directly linked siya sa ating reproductive organs tulad ng ovaries, uterus, and vagina sa mga babae, scrotum, testes, and penis sa mga lalaki. So ito yung physical signs of maturity. no, sa ating mga reproductive organs, kaya primary sex characteristics. Yan. Sa secondary naman, ito yung mga physical signs of maturity na hindi directly linked or not directly linked sa reproductive organs. Tulad halimbawa ng growth of breasts, widening of pelvis sa mga babae, facial hair and broadening of shoulders in boys, body hair, changes in voice and skin, no, sa both boys and girls. Yan, secondary sex characteristics. So, lahat ng yan, primary man o secondary man, ay tinatawag nating pubertal changes or puberty. Okay? So, pag sinabi nating menarche, this is the onset of menstruation o yung start, no? Pag sinabing onset, that is the start or the beginning of menstruation. That is usually happens at age 13. Okay? Spermarch, ito naman yung first spontaneous ejaculation of sperm, no, sa mga boys. And also usually happens at age 13 years old also. Okay, ano nga ba yung mga factors, no, that cause the physical changes associated with puberty? Una dyan is yung ating hormones. No? Puberty change takes place when the pituitary gland signal the adrenal gland, ovaries, and testes na mag-secrete ng mga hormones na mag-initiate ng mga physical changes na yun. So, yan yung isa, no, sa mga cause. And then, yung timing ng puberty is also influenced by the social environment. For example, puberty occurs earlier for girls who experiences family conflict or depression. So, may kinalaman din daw, no, yung social environment, kung kailan matitrigger yung ating genes para mag-signal doon sa ating glands at mag-release ng mga hormones. So, hormones are powerful chemical substances secreted by the endocrine glands and carried through the body by the bloodstream. Yan. So, stress, eating patterns, exercise, sexual activity, tension, and depression can activate or suppress various aspects of the hormonal system. Yan. In sum, the hormone behavior link is complex. Okay? Vice versa naman, sa papaanong paraan naman naapektuhan ng physical changes yung psychological development. Okay? So, puberty changes affects also the adolescent psychological functioning. Teens, particularly girls, become concerned about their appearance, di ba? So, nagiging mas curious, nagiging mas conscious, no, yung mga girls pagdating sa kanilang mga itsura. So, kapag ganoon, may kinalaman yun, no, sa pag-develop ng kanyang self-esteem, self-confidence, thus, personality. When forewarned, adolescents respond positively to menarche and spermarch. Adolescents are moodier than children or adults. Yan, kasi nga, bago sa kanila yung experience ng puberty eh. So, nagbabago rin yung kanilang mood. No? Nagsishift from, kumbaga, nagsishift siya very frequently, no? Yan, pagdating sa mga activities and social setting. Early maturation tends to be harmful to girls. So, kapag yung mga early bloomers natin ng mga babae, mas prone sila sa mga depression, family conflict, no, mababang self-esteem, ayan. Kasi nga, syempre, 'di ba, kapag halimbawa maaga silang nag-mature physically, mas kumbaga, mas prone sila sa tukso, no, o kaya naman sa mga nambubuli, no, yung sa in terms of physical, halimbawa ay meron na kagad breast enlargement, tapos yung mga kaklase mo ay hindi pa. So, more likely na ikaw yung mapapansin agad. So, manonotice ka kaagad. Yan, kaya mas may harmful, no, yung early maturation for girls. Experiences that are linked to Earlier pubertal onset include nutrition, yan, depende rin sa nutrition, no? Kumbaga kung sapat ang iyong kinakain, siguro mas maaga kang maagang mag-puberty. Yan, urban environment, low socioeconomic status, adoption, no? Kung ikaw ay ampon, father absence, no? Kung wala ang tatay, family conflict, maternal harshness, child maltreatment, and early substance use. Alright? And then, for example, a recent study found that child sexual abuse ay linked din no, sa earlier pubertal onset. Alright? So, in terms of body image, no, yung ating preoccupation with our how do we look no, as a person. Okay? So, ito yung mga iba't ibang researches. Okay, so sabi dito, preoccupation with body image ay strong no, throughout adolescence. Pero mas acute siya during early adolescence, no, a time when adolescents are more dissatisfied with their bodies kesa sa late adolescence. So pag sinabi natin early, siguro ito yung mga age between 9 to 13, mga ganyan, while late, mga 14 to 17, no? So, yung mga ganong edad. So, various aspects of exposure to the internet and social media are increasing the body dissatisfaction of adolescents. And also the emerging adults, no? Yung mga nasa 20 to 25, especially females. In general, girls are less happy with their bodies and have more negative body images than boys throughout puberty. So, mas ano talaga, no? Mas prone ang mga babae na maka-experience ng dissatisfaction or negative outlook towards their bodies. Girls are more negative body images may be due to media portrayals of the attractiveness of being thin. So, talagang yung media, no, yung pinapakita ng lalo na ngayon ng social media na ano ba yung konsepto ng pagiging maganda, no, halimbawa ay yun nga payat, maputi, ganyan, straight ang buhok. Yan. So, yan yung mga portrayal na pinapakita sa media like TV and social media and internet na nakakadagdag doon sa negative body image ng mga babae. Yan, during puberty, no? And then one study had found that boys and girls body images became more positive as they moved from the beginning to the end of adolescence. So, nag-i-improve naman, no? Hindi naman tayo na-stuck doon sa thinking na we think of ourselves na pangit, no? Na negative, in a negative way. So, nag-i-improve naman siya as we grow older. Alright, so in terms of early and late maturation, dito pinapakita naman yung ano yung mga nararanasan or na-experience ng mga adolescents na nauunang mag-mature o yung mga late bloomers, no? So adolescents who mature earlier or later than their peers perceive themselves differently, according to Lee and others. At least during adolescence, it is advantageous to be an early maturing rather than a late maturing boy. Okay? Sa boys yon. Unlike sa girls, di ba sabi natin, harmful no, para sa girls ang early maturation. Pero sa boys, iba. Mas okay ang early maturation no, kaysa sa late. Yan. Early and late maturation have been linked with body image. Yan. In one study, in the 6th grade, early maturing girls showed greater satisfaction with their figures than did late maturing girls. But by the 10th grade, late maturing girls were more satisfied. Ayan. Siguro kasi nagko-compare sila, halimbawa sa mga grade 6, no, 6th grade. Ito naman Amerika, kumbaga Western, no? So, sa kanila, syempre, parang nauuna sila maging sexually mature. So, mas curious sila pagdating sa sex. So, ibig sabihin, kapag namulat sila sa sex, mas gusto nila na yung kanilang katawan ay matured already, no? For them to be qualified or para mag-engage, no, sa sexual intercourse. Yan. Also, one study found that in the early high school years naman, late maturing boys had a more negative body image than early maturing boys. So, eto naman, yun nga, sa mga lalaki, syempre, mas gusto nila na nauna sila mag-mature kasi lumalaki yung katawan nila, di ba? Nagkakamuscle, no? Nagiging mas manly yung dating, which is nakakadagdag sa kanilang physical appearance na maganda, no? So, kapag late maturing sila, mas hindi maganda sa pakiramdam o sa experience nila kasi ah, pakiramdam nila hindi sila handsome, no? Hindi sila manly. Ayan, so parang nahuhuli, no, sila sa kanilang mga peers. Early maturing girls are more likely to smoke, drink, be depressed, have an eating disorder, engage in delinquency, struggle for earlier independence from their parents, and have older friends. And their bodies are likely to elicit responses from males that lead to earlier dating and earlier sexual experiences. So dahil nga early maturing yung kanilang katawan, no, meron na kagad breast enlargement, meron na kagad silang menstruation at an early age. So nagbabago yung hubog ng kanilang mga katawan. So nagiging mas prone sila na magustuhan, no, ng mga lalaki at maging prone din sa dating and engaging in sexual relationship. At dahil doon, mas dumadami, mas lumalaki yung nagiging problema nila in terms of having a relationship at an early age, no? Unang nakakaranas sila ng mga breakups, heartbreaks, yan. So, dahil doon, nakakaaway nila yung mga parents nila, particularly the mother, ayan. So, that could lead also to depression kapag hindi sila naiintindihan ng family o ng mga magulang nila. So parang ganun yung nagiging sistema, no? Yan. In some, early maturation often has more favorable outcomes. So maraming favorable outcomes ang early maturation, no? Sa boys, especially in early adolescence. However, late maturation may be favorable for boys, especially in terms of career development naman nila. Kasi nga, syempre, kapag hindi mo na-develop yung muscles and body nila, uh, they redirect their energy to something useful like skill development and career development. So, yun yung nauuna nilang i-develop instead of sexual or physical characteristics. So, yun yung mga iba't ibang research na may kinalaman sa early and late maturation in adolescence. Okay, now let's look at the brain structure in the adolescent. Okay, so here we can see the structures of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. Okay, this is the judgment region. Yan, that reigns in intense emotions but doesn't finish developing until at least emerging adulthood. And then we also have the corpus callosum, no, yung nasa gitna, the nerve fibers connecting the brain's two hemispheres, and they thicken in adolescence to process information more effectively. And then we have the small structure there on the middle part, the amygdala, the limbic system structure especially involved in emotion, which is the first, no, to develop. That's why it's the reason also why we are very emotional during the adolescence period. And the limbic system is the lower subcortical system in the brain that is the seat of emotion. So, sa limbic system, nandun yung amygdala. No? And then, this system is almost completely developed in early adolescence. So, before pa man na-develop yung prefrontal cortex, which is for logic, for judgment, decision-making, nauna nang mag-mature or ma-develop yung limbic system that is responsible for the emotions. Okay? So the development of the brain mainly changes in a bottom-up, top-down sequence with sensory, appetitive, no, that is drinking, eating, sexual, sensation-seeking, and risk-taking brain linkages, maturing first, and higher-level brain linkages such as self-control, planning, and reasoning maturing later. So, ibig sabihin, mas nauuna talagang mag-mature yung mga nasa ilalim, no, na mga ah, functions like yung may kinalaman sa senses, no? Yan, eating, yung appetite, no? Yung mga risk-taking behavior natin, yan yung una nagmamature. Kesa doon sa mga higher level thinking processes like self-control, planning, reasoning, yan, na nasa frontal cortex. So, the corpus callosum, yun yung nagko-connect doon sa brain's left and right. So, yan yung um, isa rin yan sa mga developing pa lang din no, sa adolescence. Kaya hindi natin minsan napaprocess or nahihirapan yung brain to connect the left and the right hemisphere. Alam naman natin na yung left ay is the language center of the brain. No? Nandito yung what we call this, the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area na may kinalaman sa ating speech, production, and for comprehension. And also the right hemisphere, may kinalaman naman siya sa spatial relationships and other creative um, functions. Okay? So, yan yung development ng brain sa adolescent. Okay. So, increases in dopamine naman or the neurotransmitter have been linked to increased risk-taking and the use of addictive drugs. So, parang kasunod nun, no, ng pag-develop din ng ating brain is yung pagdami din, no, ng ating neurotransmitter and other hormones, no, such as dopamine. So, ang dopamine ay may kinalaman sa risk-taking behavior natin. Kaya mas lalo tayong prone sa pagte-take ng drugs kasi risky yun eh. Kumbaga gusto natin yung mga activities na parang mapanganib, no? Like taking drugs, engaging in sex, or driving recklessly, no? Yan. And also, yung ating reward seeking, no? Na which is yun nga, yung dopamine pa rin, may kinalaman pa din doon, ay increasing din, no? During adolescence period. So the increased connectedness, referred to as brain networks, is especially prevalent across more distant brain regions. Yan. So yung reduced connectivity between the brain's frontal lobe and amygdala during the adolescence, yun din yung parang dahilan kung bakit nag increase din yung ating risk-taking behavior. Okay? Kasi nga, hindi konektado yung logic at saka yung emotion, no? Kumbaga parang we are governed, no, by the emotions rather than logic, or dapat balanse, which is or which happens during the young adulthood. Developmental cognitive neuroscience and developmental social neuroscience, in which connections between development, the brain, and cognitive or socio-emotional processes are studied. So according to Charles Nelson's 2003, he viewed that although adolescents are capable of very strong emotions, their prefrontal cortex hasn't adequately developed to the point at which they can control these passions. Scientists have yet to determine whether the brain changes come first or whether they result from experiences with peers, parents, and others. So much of the research on neuroscience and the development of the brain in adolescence is correlational in nature, and thus causal statements need to be scrutinized. So, ibig sabihin, hindi po pwedeng sabihin natin na ang dahilan kung bakit ang adolescent ay impulsive, no, nasa rebellion stage, pabigla-bigla, ginagamit lagi ang emosyon or governed by emotion ay dahil hindi nila or hindi develop yung kanilang brain structures. Yes, of course, tama naman yun. No, according to, yun nga, cognitive neuroscience and social neuroscience, totoo naman na hindi pa ganoon ka-mature yung development ng brain. Pero pwede rin naman na um, yung experience no natin sa ating mga peers, parents, and others yung naka-influence dun sa mga brain changes. Kaya parang hindi klaro no, hindi klaro yung kung, hindi fact no na matatawag kung ano ba ang nauna, yung bang brain changes o yung result from experiences. Kaya komplikado ang pag-aaral tungkol sa brain neuroscience. So, matatawag lang siyang correlational. No? Meron lang siyang contribution, influence, no? Pero we cannot say na ang cause talaga ng kanilang behavior is because of the brain structures. Okay, in terms of health, which is one of the domains na ating self na neglected no during the adolescent stage. Yan. So nutrition and exercise. So merong study ang World Health Organization nitong 2000 na sinasabi na in comparison with adolescents in the US and British, 28 countries daw sa US and British adolescents were more likely to eat fried food and less likely to eat fruits and vegetables kesa sa ibang adolescents na nasa ibang countries. Yan. So parang dito rin sa atin, 'di ba? Parang yung mga usong pagkain o yung mga ah, food na ah, paborito ng mga adolescent natin ay usually mga makakain mo sa fast food, no? Yung mga burgers, pasta, ganyan, and pastries, no? Milk tea, yan. So, yan yung mga parang um, paborito ng ating mga adolescents or teenagers. Positive physical outcomes of exercise in adolescents include a lower rate of obesity, reduced triglyceride levels, lower blood pressure, and a lower incidence of type 2 diabetes. So, pinapromote din no, sa mga adolescents yung uh, physical exercise o yung pagpapanatili ng uh, physical fitness, no, ng pagiging fit ng katawan ng mga teenagers. And also, researchers have found that screen time is associated with a number of adolescent health problems, including a lower rate of exercise and a higher rate of sedentary behavior. So, isa rin to sa mga parang tawag doon, yung sagabal or hindrance, no? Sa pagpapanatili ng fitness ng isang adolescent, no? Yung kanyang screen time. Kasi nga, nakakalimutan na niya yung mga, let's say, yung mga bodily exercises like walking, running, no? Napapalitan ng paglalaro ng video games, uh, nakatutok na sa computer, no? Kaya hindi na nagagawa yung mga, kumbaga ay mga natural na paraan para mapalakas or mapababa yung timbang, no? Yan. A combination of regular exercise and diet plan resulted in weight loss and enhanced executive function in adolescents. So, normally, sa mga adolescents, mas common yung mga eating problems, no? Like, yun nga, lalo na sa Western, obesity, no? Though, dito naman sa Philippines, hindi naman ganun karampant yung mga obese, no? Um, hindi hindi rin naman gano'n din ka-rampant yung mga eating disorders such as anorexia or bulimia nervosa, no? Unlike in other countries na talaga namang very prominent, no? Yung kasi nga pinoportray din sa internet, sa social media, yung mga what is beautiful, no? Ano ba yung itsura ng maganda, yung model-like figure, no? Kaya mas nagiging conscious yung mga specifically female adolescents sa mga bansang yon. Do adolescents get enough exercise? What are the pros and cons of participating in sports in high school? Individuals who work out at least 3 times weekly often have improved physical and mental health. So, lagi yan magka-tandem, no? Yung physical and mental health. Of course, may mga pag-aaral din na sinasabi na kapag okay ka physically, mentally, magiging okay din. Unfortunately, many high school students do not get enough exercise kasi nga nakatutok na sila sa kanilang mga smartphones, sa computers, no? Hindi na sila nag-go outside or nag-adventure, yan. So millions of American boys and girls participate in sports. Football and tracks are the most popular sports for boys and girls respectively. Dito kaya sa Philippines, ano kayang popular sports na meron dito sa atin that adolescents usually engage in? Lalo na ngayon, sa dahil nga sa pandemic, we cannot go outside, no? Medyo limited or restricted yung ating galaw, movement. So, hindi tayo um, capable today na mag-engage sa mga university games, sports fest, and all, no, na may kinalaman sa sports. Yan. The benefits of participating in sports include improved physical fitness, enhanced self-esteem, and understanding about teamwork. Yan. The potential costs include injury and abuse of performance-enhancing drugs. So, syempre, lahat naman ng bagay ay mayroong pros and cons. So, ang pro ng mga pag-engage sa sports ay, yun nga, syempre, nagiging fit yung katawan, no, na-enhance yung self-esteem, confidence level, lalo na pag nananalo, no, pag nakaka-experience ng panalo sa sports. And, we also tend to understand teamwork, no, kung paano ba makisama sa ating team, sa ating mga kagrupo para papaano planuhin ang pagkapanalo, no, yung mga strategies and tactics, yan. Kaya lang kapag, yun nga, may mga cons din ang pagsali sa sports, lalo na yung mga sports na um, pwede ka mapahamak, no? So, pwede mag-result sa injury. Yan. And then, yung mga sports na kailangan mo uminom or gumamit ng mga performance-enhancing drugs. So here, what are the elements of a healthy diet for adolescents? Why do some adolescents suffer from eating disorder? Ayan, so let's take a look on the following concepts. Okay, so for proper growth, teenagers need to consume adequate calories, calcium, and iron. Unfortunately, many teenagers do not eat properly and do not receive adequate nutrition. Anorexia and bulimia, eating disorder that typically affect adolescent girls, are characterized by an irrational fear of being overweight. So both disorders have this irrational fear of being overweight. The only difference between the two is that anorexia is having an abnormally underweight, no? Kumbaga, underweight yung kumbaga yung parang yung specifier ng anorexia nervosa. While for the bulimia nervosa, the specifier would be the abnormal eating patterns. No, yung you eat a lot, no, kumbaga you binge eating and then suddenly you vomit, no, you purge. Yan. So abnormal eating patterns 'yun. Yan. Kasi what is normal is you eat, then you swallow, no? And then you do not purge, no? Pero sa bulimia, they usually purge. Yan. Sa anorexia, mas um, ang specifier talaga is yung abnormal weight nila, underweight sila. Okay? And they restrict their eating. Yan. Sa bulimia kasi, they can be of a normal weight. Yan. Although, they have also irrational fear of being overweight and they are ashamed, no, of their eating patterns. That's why they purge alone, no? Nagtatago sila kapag nagpa-purge sila. Pero sa anorexia, they are proud to say na uh, they are dieting, no? They are restricting their food intake, yan. They're proud. Yan. So, in fact, nakikita nila yung sarili nila na beautiful, no? Kapag, yun nga, kapag successful yung kanilang pagda-diet. Kaya lang, yun nga, dahil nga may irrational fear of becoming overweight, sa tuwing haharap sila sa mirror, they still see themselves as fat. So, parang hindi sila ganun ka-convince and kulang pa yung kanilang pagpapapayat. Ayan. So, yung body mass index, ito yung sinusukat, no, para malaman kung ikaw ay overweight, underweight, or normal weight. Ayan. And the basal metabolic rate is the speed, no, kung papaano nagko-consume, no, ng calorie yung katawan mo. Kasi may mga tao na kahit konti lang yung kinain nila, mabagal, no, yung metabolism. Pero meron namang iba na madami silang kinain, pero dahil mabilis yung metabolism, maya gutom na sila ulit, so kakain sila ulit. Yan. So, ito yung mga elements of a healthy diet. Okay, so what are the common obstacles to healthy growth in adolescents? The three leading causes of death in adolescents are unintentional injuries, homicide, and suicide. Yeah, that is according to the National Center for Health Statistics in 2018. Many of these deaths could be prevented, di ba? Unintentional injury. Yan, siguro hindi nag-iingat kasi nga they are engaged in risky behaviors, no? Impulsive. Homicide, no? Na-engage sila sa mga crime. Um, and then suicide. Yan, dahil nga sa mga internalizing problems like depression and having anxiety. Um, Adolescents often overestimate the harm of risky behaviors in general, no? But they don't see themselves as being personally at risk and often place greater value on the rewards associated with risky behavior. So hindi kasi nila napapansin 'yun. Kumbaga mas doon sila sa rewarding experience nung risky behavior nila. Like for example, drinking, 'di ba? Having sex, no? Kumbaga yung reward, 'di ba nga syempre madami silang dopamine, no, na doon sa development, no? Kaya gusto nila yung puro rewarding na experience. Kaya yung mga short term, no, na reward. Kaya doon sila nag-engage sa mga risky behavior, not knowing na pwede nila itong ikapahamak. Of growing concern is the increasingly common practice of mixing alcohol and energy drinks. Yan, isa rin yan, no? Yung pinaghahalo natin, halimbawa yung, I don't know kung may gumagawa pa nito, no? Yung mga pinaghahalo yung mga, let's say, ano to, yung energy drink like Cobra or Sting, and then ihahalo mo sa alcohol, no? So, which is linked to a higher rate of driving while intoxicated. Now, let's take a look on the cognitive development of the adolescent. Okay, now we go to the information processing in adolescence. Yan. So, yung patterns of thinking ngayon ng mga adolescents ay titingnan natin, no? Lalo na yung sa theory ni John Piaget. This is the last stage, the what we call formal operational thinking. So, yung bang mga pagpoprotesta o pagde-demonstrate ng mga teenager sa panahon na 'to, ibig sabihin ba ay may kinalaman yung kanilang estado ng pag-iisip, 'no? 'Yan. So, tingnan natin kung totoo nga na yung kanilang hypothetical deductive reasoning and idealistic thinking is also connected or relevant or related to their engagement in demonstrations like this. Okay. The formal operational stage. Another indication of the abstract quality of adolescents' thought is their increased tendency to think about thought itself. Sabi nga dito, I began thinking about why I was thinking what I was. Then I began thinking about why I was thinking about what I was thinking about what I was. Okay? So, sinasabi dito na uh, Pag sinabi mong thinking about thinking, so you are talking about metacognition, di ba? So, yung formal operational stage is like a recursive thinking also, no? You can now think what she thinks and also you can think what you think. And adolescents are no longer limited to actual, concrete experiences as anchors for thought. They can conjure up make-believe situations, no? They can think of possibilities, abstract propositions, and events that are purely hypothetical and can try to reason logically about them. Yan. So, they can reason out, no? Maski hindi ito realistic, di ba? Idealistic, yan. Children are likely to solve problems through trial and error, while adolescents begin to think more as a scientist thinks, no? Parang mga what ifs, ganyan. If then principle. Kapag ginawa ko to, ito yung pwede mangyari. Devising plans to solve problems and systematically testing solutions. Thus, formal operational thinkers develop hypotheses about ways to solve problems and then systematically deduce the best path to follow to solve the problem. So that is how formal operational stage is. Okay, so how do working memory and processing speed change in adolescence? Working memory increases in capacity and processing speed becomes faster. Both achieve adult-like levels during adolescence. Kuhn 2009 further argues that the most important cognitive change in adolescent is the improvement in the executive function. Kasi nga, ito yung time na nagmamature or nade-develop yung frontal cortex na kung saan ay naandoon ang executive function. So, yung working memory or also known as the short-term memory is also increasing in capacity niya, no? So, mas lumalawak, mas dumadami yung pwede mong ilagay o i-process actively doon sa working memory. Kumbaga, kaya mo mag-focus sa maraming bagay, di ba? Pwede kang gumawa ng mga activities simultaneously. You can now divide your attention to many activities. And, of course, yung processing speed, yung bilis, no, ng pagpoproseso ay nagiging, ano din, no? Nagiging prominent din during this stage. Ayan. So, that is highly workable, no? That working memory, increase in capacity, as well as processing speed, talaga namang it becomes faster. Effective control of thinking in a number of areas, including controlling attention, reducing interfering thoughts, and being cognitively flexible. Yan. Kumbaga, kaya nating, as adolescent, kaya mong i-control, no, yung, kung ano yung mga gagawin, ano yung mga bibigyan mo ng focus, saan mo ia-attend yung attention mo, and then kaya mo ring magbaliwala ng mga thoughts na hindi naman importante as of the moment. So, mas nagiging cognitively flexible, no, kapag nasa adolescent stage. Kaya mas madaming mga difficult task na binibigay sa mga high school and college students. Kasi nga, mas kaya na nila na i-control yung kanilang cognition or cognitive process. In terms of decision making, most people make better decisions when they are calm than when they are emotionally aroused. That may especially be true for adolescents who have a tendency to be emotionally intense. So, kapag sila ay nasa kasama ng mga barkada or peers sa mga risk-taking na situations, it increases the likelihood that the adolescent will make risky decision. Kasi nga, nasa heightened emotion siya. So, sabi din sa mga pag-aaral nga, totoo naman siyang tunay na mas nakakagawa tayo ng tamang desisyon kapag tayo ay nasa kalmadong estado ng emosyon natin. Yan. Kaya lang, since yun nga, ang mga adolescents sa panahon na to ay they are using most of the time, no, their emotions are mostly intense and governed nga sila, no, ng emotions. So, most likely na they cannot derive to the right decision. How do increase in content knowledge, strategies, and metacognitive skills influence adolescent cognition? Content knowledge increases to expert-like levels in some domains, and strategies and metacognitive skills become much more sophisticated. So, yung kaalaman, mas nadadagdagan, mas lumalawak, di ba, sa stage ng adolescence. At yung mga strategies kung paano i-solve yung problem, mas lumalawak din, mas nagiging komplikado. And of course, they know how to think about thinking. Kaya yung metacognitive skills din ay nag increase din during this period. What changes in problem solving and reasoning takes place in adolescence? Adolescents of Adolescents often solve problems and analytically using mathematics or logic. They also acquire the skill in detecting weaknesses in scientific evidence and in logical arguments. Yan. Kaya kapag nakipag-usap ka sa mga adolescents, kadalasan talaga meron silang katwiran na ibibigay sa'yo kasi nga they solve problems very logical, no? Kumbaga minsan wala na sa hulog, no? They use very idealistic thinking. Uh, Kumbaga parang akala nila alam nila lahat, gano'n. So that is how they think, no? And it's good and it's normal because it develops somehow their thinking capacities and also their metacognition, no, na important din. Kumbaga talagang lahat tayo dumadaan sa ganong klaseng thinking. And then later on, magbabalance out naman yung emotion and logic sa pagdating sa adulthood. Alright, so here we are in the critical thinking of the adolescence period. Okay, so we have four manifestations of how do adolescents think critically. So number one, increased speed, automaticity, and capacity of information processing, which free cognitive resources for other purposes. So more breadth of the content knowledge in a variety of domains. Three, increased ability to construct new combinations of knowledge. And four, a greater range and more spontaneous use of strategies or procedures for applying or obtaining knowledge, such as planning, considering alternatives, and cognitive monitoring. So in short, ang adolescent ay capable na makapag-isip, no, critically. Kaya nga sa high school and college, pinapagawa na kayo ng mga essay, reflective essay, no, that requires critical thinking. Kasi isa to sa mga higher order thinking skills na usually ay nade-develop and mostly mature pagdating nyo ng adulthood. Okay, so ito yung mga features, no, sa information processing during adolescence period. Sa kabila, yun yung kanilang state, no, kung paano siyang, ano yung estado niya, no, sa adolescence period. So we have working memory and processing speed. So para siyang adult-like na, no, in terms of processing speed, mabilis na rin siya, nakaka-process na rin ng information. Yan. Sa content knowledge naman, of course, they have now greater knowledge of the world, no, compared sa nung sila ay children pa lang. And yung memory din ay tumataas din. Ayan. Strategies and metacognition, adolescents are better able to identify task-appropriate strategies and monitor, no, yung effectiveness ng mga strategies na yun. Kumbaga parang pagdating sa halimbawa sa study habits, nakakagawa na ng iba't ibang paraan yung mga adolescents kung paano nila pag-aaralan yung kanilang mga subject, no? And natetest din nila, ini-evaluate din nila sa sarili nilang way kung effective ba yung mga strategies na ginagawa nila. Yan. Sa problem solving naman and reasoning, of course, they can now reason out, no, analytically, and they rely on logic, no. Yeah, and they're able to have or to reason logically in scientific way. Yan, kumbaga meron na sila mga evidences. Okay? Okay, so now we go to reasoning about moral issues. Ayan. So, reasoning about moral issues, this is according to Kohlberg, no, Lawrence Kohlberg, yung kanyang mga stages or levels of moral reasoning. So, this is also the time, no, ang adolescence period na kung saan ay natututo na tayo kung papaano mag-reason out gamit yung ating moral compass. Okay, so how do adolescents reason about moral issues? Kohlberg proposed that moral reasoning includes pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional levels. Moral reasoning is first based on rewards and punishment, and much later on personal moral codes. As predicted by Kohlberg's theory, people progress through the stages in sequence and do not regress, and morally advanced reasoning is associated with more frequent moral behavior. However, few people attain the most advanced levels. So, ibig sabihin, hindi tayo pabaligtad, no? Hindi tayo nagre-regress. Progressive, no, ang ating development ng moral reasoning. Yun nga lang, um, siguro hindi nag-regress pero hindi na siya umusad, no? Pwedeng gano'n na mangyari. Pwedeng ma-stuck doon sa isang level or stage of moral reasoning development. Yan. So, tingnan natin kung ano-ano ba yung mga levels na yon and stages according to Lawrence Kohlberg. Alright, so meron ditong isang tinatawag nating moral dilemma. Moral dilemma because it can be right or wrong depending on the reasoning level, no, na gagamitin mo. Kaya tinawag siyang dilemma kasi nga it will depend on the person who is thinking, no? Kung ano yung masasabi niya, kung good ba o bad ba yung ginawa, no, nung tao dito sa snippet na to. Okay, so I will allow me to read, no, the snippet. In Europe, a woman was near death from cancer. One drug might save her, a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The druggist was charging $2,000, 10 times what the drug cost him to make. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later. But the druggist said no. The husband got desperate and broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. Okay, so for the pre-conventional level, the first level in the moral reasoning development, okay, where moral reasoning is based on the external forces. Meaning, yung kanyang reasoning ay based sa rewards and punishment. Kaya external forces. No, kumbaga sumusunod tayo, no, nagiging tama ang isang bagay or mali ang isang bagay kasi nga depende kung tayo ba ay nabibigyan ng reward, no, nagiging tama siya kung rewarding at mali naman kung punishment. Yan. So sa obedience orientation, which is the first stage of pre-conventional level, moral reasoning is based on the belief that adults know what is right and wrong. So So at this level, children interpret good and bad in terms of external rewards and punishments. For example, children and adolescents obey adults because adults tell them to obey. No? Kapag binigyan mo ng candy yung isang bata dahil nakagawa siya ng mabuti, so tatanim sa isip niya yon na yung ginawa niya ay good. So, yung ginawa niya ay mayroong reward, that's why sa isip niya yun ay tama. So, kapag naman ito ay binigyan mo ng parusa, like for example, pinagalitan mo sa harap ng maraming tao, tatanim naman sa isip niya na yun ay masama o hindi tama yung kanyang ginawa dahil siya ay napahiya at napagalitan. So, that is a form of punishment. Okay, so obedience orientation. Parang tayo, di ba kapag merong pulis no, na nakabantay, hindi mo gagawin yung bawal kasi nga alam mo na huhulihin ka ng polis kapag ginawa mo yun. Like for example, sa pagtawid sa kalsada, na alam mo namang bawal tumawid, pero wala namang nakatingin na polis, so tatawid ka dahil wala namang magpaparusa sa'yo. So that is level or stage 1 no, ng level 1 or pre-conventional level. Pangalawang stage, under pa rin ng pre-conventional is moral reasoning is based on the aim of looking out for one's own needs. No, parang ito yung nakikinabang ka kasi kaya nagiging tama yung isang bagay. Parang sa example dito, sabi dito, they might be nice to others so that others will be nice to them. This earliest level has sometimes been described as what's in it for me. Kumbaga, anong mapapala ko dito? Yan. So, parang nagiging tama yung isang bagay kapag meron akong napala or meron akong parang in return, no, nakinabang ako dun sa pangyayari. So, nagiging tama yun, yung bagay na yun. Because ako din ay merong napala or I benefited, parang ganun. So, in other textbook, this instrumental orientation is called mutual benefit. No, parang I'll scratch your back if you will scratch mine. No, parang ganun. So, that is stage 2 of the first level, pre-conventional level. So, pareho silang may external forces, no? Reward or punishment. Okay, second level is the conventional. So, kasi nga hindi po pwede na mag-base lang tayo dun sa reward or punishment. Kaya naman, ang tao gumawa siya ng paraan para magkaroon ng tinatawag nating standard or norm. Ano ba yung tama, ano ba yung mali? Kaya conventional kasi ito yung madaling pagbasihan no, ng tama o mali or ng pagiging moral. Yan. No, conventional, convenience, di ba? So, based on society's norms. Okay? Kaya lang dito, yung dalawang stage, yung isa kasi ay naka-base sa batas, no, sa nasusulat, and yung isa naman naka-base sa yung unwritten, no, unwritten law, yung hindi nasusulat pero sinusunod pa rin ng marami dahil nga parang yun na yung nakagawian, yun na yung tradisyon, no, yun na yung paniniwala ng halos karamihan, no, majority. Yan. So, pangatlong stage, no, under ng conventional level, third stage, is the interpersonal norms. A characteristic of Kohlberg's stage 3, in which moral reasoning is based on winning the approval of others. So, dito, parang sinasabi na kapag kung ano yung sinasabi ng marami, yun yung basihan kung ikaw ay good boy or bad boy, good girl or bad girl. Ayan. Kasi nga, depende no, sa tingin ng society na kinalibilangan mo. Although hindi siya nasusulat, no, wala siya sa law or sa batas, sinusunod mo pa rin siya kasi doon ka naka-base sa anong sasabihin ng iba sa'yo. Diba? Ano yun eh, malaki yung impact nung ano yung sasabihin ng iba tungkol sa'yo. No? Yung tingin ng iba sa'yo. Kaya parang gusto mong i-please, no, i-comply yung approval nila. Tama ba itong gagawin ko o mali? Yan. So, interpersonal norms. Okay? Pang-apat na stage, under pa rin ang conventional level, is social system morality. So ito, pwedeng nakasulat na, no? Pwedeng nasa batas na siya. So based on maintenance of order in society. Kasi hindi pwede na puro lang sabi-sabi lang. Kailangan meron din tayo nasusulat na basis, no, ng ating morality na, bawal pumatay, di ba? Kakasuhan ka ng homicide or murder. So dahil doon, pwede kang parusahan according to kung ano yung nakasulat na possible na sanction kapag nakapatay ka. Yan. So, individuals abide by certain standards, no? Pwedeng internal, yun nga, yung sa winning of approval of others. But they are the standards of others, no? As such as the parents or the laws of society. Ayan. So, yun. Based on the society's norms. Yan. So, kung yung kay Heinz, kung babalikan natin yung vignette, no, nung kay Heinz, na nagnakaw siya nung drug, mali yun kung social system morality kasi nasa batas yun, theft ang ginawa niya, no, isang klase yun ng pagnanakaw. And siguro din sa mata ng ibang tao, mali din yung ginawa niya, no, kung ang pagbabasehan ay yung sa druggist na point of view, no, mali yung nakawin mo yung gawa ng ibang tao. Pero kung titingnan mo naman yung point of view naman nung sa asawa niya na para naman ito sa kapakanan ng asawa niya. So, yung yung ginawa ni Heinz na ninakaw niya yung drug is nagpapakita rin na pagiging mabuting asawa niya, na gagawin niya lahat para gumaling yung asawa niya. So, in a way, sa interpersonal norms, parang depende, no, kung kanino ka nakatingin, kung anong perspective, dun ba sa druggist, sa gumawa ng gamot, o kay Heinz na gusto lang naman niyang gumaling yung asawa niya. So, yun. Okay. On the third level, the post-conventional level, morality is based on a personal moral code. So, hindi na siya based doon sa rewards or external forces. Hindi rin based sa others' opinion, no? Interpersonal and, of course, law and order. So, now, this is now based on your personal moral code. So, internal na siya. Okay? So, ang panglimang stage ay social contract. Okay? So, in which moral reasoning is based on the belief that laws are for the good of all members of society. Hindi yung para lang sa iilan. Okay? And then, pang-anim na stage, which is the last, is the universal ethical principle, which moral reasoning is based on moral principles that apply to all. So, parang, kasi kapag ethics na, it means to say na, depende na ito sa sarili mong conscience, no? Yung pakiramdam, or yung konsensya. Yan. Kaya personal moral code na. Although sinasabi ng batas na mali yun, pero kung ito naman ay parang may pinipili lang na iilan, no, hindi nakikinabang ang lahat, ay hindi yon moral. Okay? So, iilan lang yung mga nakakarating sa ganitong stage ng moral reasoning. So, at this level, the individual recognizes alternative moral courses. Yan, explores the options, di ba? Maraming paraan. Although, pwedeng mali yung isang bagay na yun, pero kung titingnan, susuriin mo, based din sa iyong sariling konsensya at prinsipyo, pwede nating mapagtanto na kahit papano ay naging tama yung desisyon. And then, this decides on a personal moral code. Okay, so ito yung summary of Kohlberg's theory of moral development. So, meron tatlong levels, pre-conventional, conventional, and the post-conventional. And sa bawat tatlong levels ay merong dalawang stages. Yan. So, sa pre-conventional, we have stage 1, obedience to authority. no? And then nice behavior in exchange for future favors or mutual benefit or instrumental orientation. Okay? And then sa conventional, the basis for morality is based from the social norms. Okay? So, pwedeng others' expectation or pwedeng law and order. Okay? So, stage 3 and stage 4 yan. And then sa post-conventional, it is now based on our personal moral codes. Or stage 5, merong social contract, no, na dapat nagbe-benefit ang lahat, no, for the common good, no, general rule. And then stage 6 is the personal moral system based on abstract principles. Ang moral reasoning ba ay pare-pareho sa lahat ng culture? So, sabi dito, yung kay Lawrence Kohlberg kasi ay parang hindi siya applicable, no, sa ibang kultura. Kaya naman, may mga ibang theory na develop, no, na ang moral reasoning is fluid also, no, na pwedeng magbago depende sa culture. Okay? So, not all cultures emphasize justice in moral reasoning. For instance, the Hindu religion emphasizes duty and responsibility to others. And consistent with these beliefs, Hindu children and Indians emphasize caring for other people in their moral reasoning. So, mas mahalaga, pinahalagahan yung caring, yung care, no? Yung duty and responsibility. Yung kahit na, kaya nga minsan, di ba, kahit na alam mo may kasalanan siya, pero dahil nangingibabaw yung pag-care mo sa kanya, ay, yun, itatago mo siya or pagtatakpan mo siya. Yan, lalo na kung kamag-anak mo siya or family mo siya. So, depende sa kung ano ang kultura mo, dun din nakabase yung moral reasoning. So, tulad nito, no, itong isang snippet ulit o vignette, no, na nandito si Ben. Yan. Ito ay according to Miller and Bersoff, Cultural Differences in Moral Reasoning Dilemma. So, allow me to read again the vignette. Ben planned to travel to San Francisco in order to attend the wedding of his best friend. He needed to catch the very next train if he was to be on time for the ceremony, as he had to deliver the wedding rings. However, Ben's wallet was stolen in the train station. He lost all his money as well as his ticket to San Francisco. Ben approached several officials as well as passengers and asked them to loan him money to buy a new ticket. But because he was a stranger, no one was willing to lend him the money he needed. While Ben was trying to decide what to do next, a well-dressed man sitting next to him walked away. Ben noticed that the man had left his coat unattended. Sticking out of the man's coat pocket was a train ticket to San Francisco. He saw that the man had more than enough money in his coat pocket to buy another train ticket. Ayan. So if you are Ben, what will you do? Are you going to take the money out of the coat's pocket? No? Knowing na meron pa naman siyang natitirang pera, kukunin mo lang yung ticket? Or not? You will return uh, the coat, you will find the man, and then return the coat, hoping that he will reward you, no, by returning the coat for him. Yan. So, it will depend, no? Kumbaga, what is your reasoning ba? Are you sticking by your moral code na or moral norms na I will return it kasi gusto kong magmukhang mabuti sa mata ng iba because it's the right thing to do? Or pinapahalagahan mo yung best friend's wedding mo na kailangan mo makapunta doon no matter what and then i-return mo na lang yung money if ever kasi mas nakikare ka doon sa best friend mo. So, yon. That is, I will leave you the decision if what is moral for you and what is not. One solution emphasizes individual rights and justice. Ben should not take the ticket from the man's coat pocket, even though it means not getting to San Francisco in time to deliver the wedding rings to his best friend. Kasi right nung tao na yon na hindi siya manakawan. 'Di ba? Kumbaga hustisya, no, na may magsole ng kanyang coat. The other solution placed a priority on caring for others because Ben cared for for his best friend. Ben should go to San Francisco to deliver the wedding rings to his best friend, even if it means taking the train ticket from the other man's coat pocket. Yan. So, justice perspective is a moral perspective that focuses on the rights of the individual and in which individuals independently make moral decisions. How do concern for justice and caring for other people contribute to moral reasoning? So Gilligan or Carol Gilligan proposed that females' moral reasoning is based on caring and responsibility for others, not justice. Research does not support consistent sex differences in moral reasoning but has found that males and females both consider caring as well as justice in their moral judgment, depending on the situation. So, kung merong justice perspective na pinapahalagahan yung individual's rights, meron din namang care perspective according to Carol Gilligan. The moral perspective of Carol Gilligan, which views people in terms of their connectedness with others, no, kung gaano sila ka-related, emphasize interpersonal communication, relationship with others, and concerns for others. What factors help promote more sophisticated reasoning about moral issues? Many factors can promote more sophisticated moral reasoning, including number one, observing others' reasoning at more advanced levels. Two, discussing moral issues with peers, teachers, and parents. And three, involvement in a religious community that connects the adolescents to a network of caring peers and adults. So, maraming factors, no, na pwedeng makaapekto kung paano ba tayo nagre-reason out sa ating mga moral dilemma or moral issues. So, wala talaga tayong masasabi na absolute truth, no, or absolutely good or bad na behavior. So, it will depend, no, kung paano ka lumaki, kung ito ba yung na-observe mo sa iyong family and friends, sa iyong neighborhood, yan, kung ito ba ay nadidiscuss mo din sa iyong mga kaklase, kaibigan, guro, at magulang. At syempre, ang morality konektado rin sa ating religious orientation. Kaya, yon para sa akin, ang moral reasoning ay hindi naman sinasabi na absolutely correct, no, yung mga sinabi kanina ni na Lawrence Kohlberg at saka ni Carol Gilligan at ni Bersoff and Miller. It will also depend on you as a person, as an individual, no, in terms of your holistic development, if what is moral and what is not.